We're doing it. New show live right here, Affiliate Hot Seat.
We're doing
Why?
it.
Because we love you guys and we appreciate it. And it was requested. So and this is a cool one because we had a ton of applicants and we pulled Richard's scenario and we're like, this is probably the best place to start this show is with somebody who's starting in their garage. So Richard, thank you for coming on the show, my friend.
Yeah, thanks guys. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. But before we do that, please subscribe to the show. Go over and onto your YouTube's app. Hit the little red button, wherever that is, based on where I'm pointing. Subscribe. If you guys have questions or if you want to be on the show for the Affiliate Hot Seat, we have a link that will drop in the chat and it'll be in the show notes where you can just fill out a little form. We'll have you on the show. But let's dive in. A couple things. It's open season, everybody. All right. Some snafus in the open world early in the game, but always ready. Always be flexible is the name of the game. So
Always be flexible.
Anyway, Richard, welcome, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Speaking of the open, we got some funny stories too about always being ready. So it's a beautiful rainy day here in DC. And as we'll get into, most of our workouts are outside. And so trying to run the open this morning, we had some, it was fun.
I believe it's called Unknown and Unknowable.
Ready for anything.
Yeah, ready for anything. Just for frame of reference, obviously we're not going to pull up a Google Maps and put a pin on the house on the internet, but where in the DC area are you located?
Yeah, so CrossFit P.U.G, we're in DC proper. P.U.G actually stands for Palisades Underground Gym. So we're in the Palisades neighborhood of DC, which is sort of, if you think of DC as a baseball field, downtown and the monuments are between second base and the pitcher's mound. We're all the way up in the left field corner. So behind Georgetown, right along the river, kind of. It's a very residential neighborhood.
I was going to say that's a good area. I've definitely been to some house parties in that.
Yeah, very residential. It's probably one of the more affluent neighborhoods in the city, but a lot of like middle class families, a lot of parents. Kind of demographic is that sort of almost suburban, but in an urban environment.
Right. By the way, I want to give you kudos. That might have been the best verbal description of a geographic location I've ever had. I was like, I know exactly what you're talking about. That was fantastic.
Yep.
If that is indicative of your coaching skills and your ability to give verbal cues, Richard, that will bode well for you.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah. All right, cool. So give us your CrossFit bumper sticker version of your story.
Yeah. So as background, and as you alluded to, we are a little bit of a non-traditional affiliate in that we're quote unquote a garage gym affiliate. But I like to joke that instead of a box, we're more of a square because you could really only fit like two people in my garage. So 99% of our workouts are in the backyard. So no walls, no ceilings. We affiliated a little more than a year ago. So January of 2022. Okay. 90% of my members have never done CrossFit before. And most of them, I would argue, had never even done organized exercise classes. They are overwhelmingly parents of little kids that go to the local elementary and preschool that I recruited from the pickup and drop off lines.
Cody and I were talking about this beforehand. We're like, just imagine you with a guy with a cardboard sign and be like, fitness for you after school. See you there. Beth, basically over here. Just follow me. We're in the carpool. Just follow me back to my. It's not creepy, but follow me back to my house.
Yeah, exactly. And so we run one class a day, 6 days a week. They're only in the morning. The Monday, Wednesday, Friday are at 5:30 in the morning. Tuesday, Thursday, 6:30 in the morning. And then on Saturday, we do a park workout at 8 a.m. And that's actually just sort of organically how the times have worked out because it's not meant at all to be segregated, but it seems that the ladies show up Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and the gentlemen tend to show up Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, because most of my clients are married with kids. And so mom and dad alternate days when they work out.
Okay.
So
you have a lot of couples is what it sounds like.
A lot of couples. Yep.
Okay.
Not exclusively, but like 90% of them.
That's kind of cool though.
Yeah. It does make for some programming challenges sometimes. Trying to figure out who's coming on what days. And like I said, we do, I've got a little bit of everything that you would find in a brick and mortar, but the numbers of it are small, right? So I've got one rower, I've got one assault bike. I've got a pull-up bar you can fit two people on. So you see a lot of dumbbells and kettlebells in our workouts.
Well, we will dive into some of these articles, but I think the knowledge of programming that is gained by having to start with minimal equipment is invaluable, is the way I would put it, right? Like I think people that start with all the stuff have a severe handicap when it comes to programming, because they've never had to do that before. They've never had to adjust the workout according to equipment. They don't know how to stagger start. They don't know how to do waterfalls. They don't know how to do a bunch of stuff. And if you've never had to do that, then when presented with a larger problem, they will struggle to fix it when it's just like, oh, this is the same problem that I had when I had 4 clients, but I only had 2 rowers. I just have 25 now. So I think it's cool, man. And I think you should lean into that, because the knowledge that you'll gain there will be super useful to you for many, many years. Okay. So let's go even further back than that, right? So you have a garage gym, but like, how did you find CrossFit? Are you originally from DC? How did you end up in the area?
Yeah. So I'm basically a native at this point. I grew up in Florida, but I've been here since college. I'm 40 years old now, so I've been here 20 plus years. So I found CrossFit when I was in the Army in 2007. I think it was actually literally like the week after the first games. My commanding officer discovered it and was training for the best ranger competition, and decided to grab a couple of his lieutenants to train with him. It wasn't really CrossFit, but it was, rings. It was getting upside down, doing all this crazy stuff that you didn't see at the time. And so then I came back off orders to the DC area and searched out an affiliate, and the only one around at the time was then CrossFit Alexandria, which became Outlaw, blah, 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 blah.
Yep.
I didn't actually get my L1 though until about 10 years later. So I got my L1 at 2017, and actually, Fern, you were one of the instructors there at CrossFit Reston at Maggie Tincher's gym.
At Maggie's gym.
Yeah.
Cool.
And then I got my L2 just a couple years ago in 2021, I think. Yeah.
So, where'd you do that one?
Bill Grunler's way out on the West Coast.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool.
He was programming me for a little while. So
you did your level 1 and level 2 at 2 very OG facilities. Both of those facilities, I believe, are more than 15 years old currently.
Yeah, they were both great classes too. So
okay.
Yep. So that's me in a nutshell. I've belonged to a couple different gyms. My most recent one was Second Wind CrossFit here in DC. We bought the house that I'm in right at the beginning of the pandemic, and pandemic and other things. It was about a 30-minute drive, and I got little kids, and it just became a little too much for me to go to class every single day. So right. I just started working out in my garage kind of thing. And ultimately the idea for this was, as I think a lot of people see, there's the crazy guy working out in his driveway doing weird stuff, and people poke their head in and they're saying, "Hey, what are you doing, man?" And I was like, "Hey, you want to work out with me?" And it kind of just grew organically from there until one day, my son's preschool, they do fundraisers, and someone asked if I would host like a dad's workout for a fundraiser. And we did that and got a huge, like over a dozen people, raised some money for the school. Everybody loved it and was like, "Hey, we should do this regularly." And
we are checking all of the box of the affiliate: fundraising, organic growth, like started in my backyard.
Yeah. So that's how it kind of grew from there. Was we just started working out on a regular basis. It was interesting. It took a while to like actually get off the ground as far as growth goes last year. It didn't really kick off until I got some ladies to start coming, because it was I think that folks were a little intimidated by it all, like, oh, all the guys are working out, right? So it took a while for me to get some ladies to join in, and now it's actually completely reversed. The ladies classes are overflowing. They can't get enough of it, and I got to convince some more guys to show up.
I think that's pretty standard. I have to go back and look at the numbers. I haven't looked at it in a little bit, but I would be willing to bet large sums of money, to the tune of $1, that at least 55% female at CrossFit Rife, and have been almost since day one.
Yeah, I mean, not to drink the Kool-Aid too much, but CrossFit is empowering, and I think once you finally get someone through the doors, I don't even have doors, but you know what I mean? I think they realize, oh, this is really, really cool. I can lift weights. It's kind of fun. And also my demographic, again, a lot of them are mothers or fathers of young school-age children. And we're coming out of a pandemic. So they're really craving sort of that social factor as part of CrossFit. And so the ability to see their neighbors and their friends for an hour, even every morning or every day or every other day. I actually found that that's a huge part of it, I think, is just them being able to come and chit chat in the morning and get a workout.
That was my contention from day one when all of this happened, that I was like, hey, people are going to come out of this like yearning for person to person interaction. It was like, oh, it's going to go virtual. I was like, I don't think so. That's not going to happen. So I think that's amazing. How old are your kids? You have like little kids?
Yeah, I got a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old.
Ooh, I got a 4-year-old and a 9-year-old, and my 4-year-old is going through a stage, shall we say?
Well, my 4-year-old is probably going through that same stage, but he's the easier of the two. Let's just put it that way.
Oh no, my daughter is like easy peasy. She is just smooth as a duck. My son is a big ball of emotions. Crying, fighting, laughing, all within 30 seconds of each other. What did you do in the Army?
Intel 35 Delta.
Oh, okay. That's what my wife does in the Navy, though. Yeah. Okay. Very cool. Did you do kind of like your 5 and out, I'm assuming?
No, actually, I was always in the reserve straight out of college. So I've had a full-time career, was mobilized a couple of times, but was always in the reserves.
Are you done with the reserves that you have? We have to be.
Yeah, that's a past part of my life. Don't do that anymore. Great experience. My experience was remarkably unremarkable, but yeah, it was good. And one of the things I got from it was it introduced me to CrossFit.
Yeah, that's awesome. Where'd you go to school?
George Washington University here in DC.
Got it. Okay, very cool. All right. So, obviously, feel free to. Do you work currently?
Yeah. Okay. So I have a full-time job. Would love to make this more of it, but that's actually one of the things struggling with. And I know the answer is always kind of like you want to see affiliate owners go all in kind of thing. But as an affiliate owner, that's
a gamble, right? Like,
yeah, right. And especially, to be honest, I'm fairly successful in my career now. So dropping that to go all in is kind of one of the things I want to talk about today is how do you manage sort of growth of this CrossFit affiliate while also like you've got other commitments going on too.
I think there's a little bit of a misconception about how all of that works, right? Like you can do both, right? So you can do it part-time and you can do it full-time. I've done it both ways. And unless in your scenario, like just in the little that we've spoken, I'm probably going to be in the camp of like, you should do this part-time as intelligently and as efficiently as possible, because you have this other income and we don't want to do that. And that's okay. But just like, how does that work? Pragmatically speaking, what are the booby traps involved? And like, how do I maximize my time and not create like this financial burden, all that kind of stuff?
I in my particular place too, I'm pretty fortunate in that my full-time job is actually very flexible, right? I have enough rope to like hang myself as far as timing goes. So I can, spend more time perhaps than, I'm not locked chained to a desk 9 to 5.
Right. So, okay, cool. So, all right, let's dive in here a little bit. So before we talk about getting out of the garage, this is the same thing we look at when we look at affiliates. Like, let's talk about in a series of questions about how do I optimize what I currently have first? Because the reason for that is if I optimize that, what it should bring me is capital, which makes moving out of the garage significantly easier, or the bare minimum, like less stress-free, or more stress-free. So you have, I'm assuming probably a 2-car garage, which is something.
It's actually a 1-car garage.
Okay, 1-car garage. Even more. So probably like 200 to 300 square feet.
Yeah, if that. Yep.
Okay, and then.
And like I said, 90% of our workouts are outside in the backyard. So we have a pretty good, very hardscaped, flat grass. My entire backyard has is turfed. So like like athletic turf.
Yeah.
So it's got a nice soft surface. And it's a pretty good, decent size. I don't know, maybe not 20 by 20 almost.
Okay.
So not huge. It's not a box warehouse, but
big enough. But I mean, if you're looking at 20 by 20, another 400-ish square feet. What do you have anything outside? I mean, do you have anything permanent fixtures like pull up or anything like that? Okay.
No. So talk to my wife. So we have a pull up rig outside. It's actually one of those Rogue makes an outdoor mobile pull-up bar. They actually made it for the Army's new fitness test.
Right.
It looks like an elongated one of their squat stands, basically. And we've just got that weighed down, so you can move it out. It'll fit 2 people side by side on it, and that's what we use for the pull-ups.
Okay. And then I was kind of reading through some of the stuff you submitted. So talk to me about like how many people you currently have. So we know how many classes you run a week. You run 6 primarily in the morning. And then how many people do you have kind of like regularly training with you?
Yeah. So I was looking at numbers. So I would say I have like 23, 24 regular members. And by regular members, I mean attend at least once a week. Some are, the 3 days a week during the weekday. Some are just on Saturday at the park workout kind of thing. But 24 regular members.
Okay. And then do you use your garage for vehicles or for storage?
Just storage. That's where I work out at, actually.
Got it. Okay. So if you have 20, what's the biggest class you have?
10 probably. I would say we regularly are Monday.
That's big.
Yeah. The ladies classes can get anywhere from like 8 to 10. My gentlemen almost every day are 4 or 5.
Okay. So then you've kind of already solved that first problem, right? So I was going to go in the direction of how do we maximize your current space with programming and equipment, but it sounds to me that you've already done. If you're running classes of 8 to 10 out of your backyard, it sounds like that you've cracked that nut already.
Yeah, and I actually think that's the thing. I'm on the precipice of the class, at least the Monday, Wednesday, Friday classes being quote unquote full, right?
Right.
Unless I start doing partner workouts every single day.
So that's an option, right? It's not the option. And anytime we look into these scenarios, I'm a fan of like pursue all avenues for growth, meaning like you should probably look at potentially expanding an additional class 1 or 2 days a week in combination with like running some partner workouts so I could put more people in there. Because all of this, I'm trying to start to wrap my brain around what do the financials look like so that I can project into the future to say like, okay, if I'm going to move all these people into a facility, like, could I afford it? Would be
the answer to that right now is no, but
right.
I'm happy to talk about financials too. Like one of the things I've been working on though too is just trying to like spread the people out throughout the week. And I don't want to force it, but I can't tell you how many times I, in my weekly email, say, I always put the schedule for the week, and I'm like, as a reminder, these are not segregated classes. You are more than welcome to come.
Right.
Like if you're a guy on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, if you are a female on Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. But like I said, because most of them are couples, they alternate childcare in the morning.
Yeah, I have seen untold number of gyms try to do that, and it's just not worth pursuing. Like you're just not going to be able to dictate other people's schedules. So I'm like, they will fall in to whatever works best for them based on the availability that you provide for them. So it's just like, well, if I want them to kind of move around, I'll have to kind of move things around so that they settle into their own little spots. But they're just like, well, I need to open up a 6 a.m. and get 6 a.m.ers in there. And I'm like, that's like, good luck. That's not going to happen. What'll happen is you'll open at 6 a.m. and then people will start to filter in there if they find it to be convenient for them.
Yeah, and our times are based off of what they have requested. Like I'm happy to do the same time all 5 days, but the ladies like to get their morning started a little earlier than the gentlemen do.
Well, in your instance, like that's how it always starts, because like they're my only clients, which means I have to some degree cater to them to get them into the door so that we can continue to do that. So, okay. So very likely first step is like start playing around with class schedules. And, you could move those a bunch of different ways. And then with that, I have a question. So we could be talking about this all day long without having another discussion, which is like, is there any place for you to go? Meaning like, is a brick and mortar facility even something that is feasible in your area, right? Like I've spent a ton of time in DC. The real estate is not cheap, right? So have you even started to look for spaces? What does that even look like? How far would you have to go?
Yeah, it's not feasible right now, at least by myself. So I've had a couple of different discussions with people about would they want to partner or anything like that.
Put a pin in that. Maybe come
back.
And
this is one of the things I want to talk to you about. We're having dinner with friends of ours, a lady who, wants to open up a yoga studio, and by herself, it might be cost prohibitive. And so we're having dinner to just discuss, could we share a space, that sort of thing. I think there's a pretty big delta right now because especially where I live, like you're looking at retail spaces. There's really no industrial.
I was going to say on the low end, and this is me guessing because I haven't looked up there in a while, 18 to 25 bucks a square foot.
More than that. So I talked to,
I was going to say,
I talked to another friend of my son's who's a commercial real estate agent, and she was saying you're looking at like 40 to 50.
Holy shit. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That changes everything. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, so that's still doable, but now what you have to do is you have to really look about space optimization, and like you have to go with minimal square footage. So Brian, what the hell is Brian's last name? Brian Jones, I believe. I might be making up that last name, but he used to own Patriot CrossFit and CrossFit Potomac in that kind of like corridor up there.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And I might be a little bit off on these numbers, but I'm close, and it will hold for the exercise. I don't believe he had more than 1,000 square feet for his for Potomac. I might have these backwards, so forgive me if they're wrong. But had over 200 members at the time in 1,000 square feet. Now, the way he did that was he had really optimized the space, and he was running, I believe he was running at the peak 10 or 11 classes, and he was running them every hour on the hour.
Wow.
Right. So if you're looking at on average 40, if you want to have a large range of 40 to 60% attendance, which is pretty normal inside the affiliate at 200 people, call it, we'll split the difference, 100 people coming in every day. If you're running 10 classes, that means you have 10 people in every class, 100 people showing up every day in 1,000 square feet. You can do the math on that. Each person has, 100 square feet, which is not a ton. So it can be done, right? But you would have to really adjust everything within how you operate the business to make that work. And you might be able to do that, right? And you get out of there with 2,000 square feet and you could do that. So where I'm going with that is like you need to look at significantly smaller spaces than the average.
Oh, totally.
Gym.
Yeah. Eyes wide open on that. And I think right now, like that's ultimately the end goal. I think right now I'm focused on like, how can I squeeze more revenue out of what I've got, grow within what I've got so that I can sort of start packing those savings away to get there.
So that leads into the next question is like, how are you currently charging? What does that look like? I know you said you did about 8,000 to 10,000 gross last year. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And then, so how is that package? Like somebody wants to come in, they're like, yo, I heard this CrossFit P.U.G things. This weird guy works out in his garage. How do I join?
Yeah. So, here it is. So first class is always free. If they come back, then we'll talk about charging them. So I only do class passes, and there was a rationale for that. I don't know if I think it still makes sense, and I can talk about that. Mm-hmm. Single class is $20. The more you buy, the more you save, right? So a 10 class pack is $180 and a 20 is $300. And that's how I do it. Most people either buy the 20 or they just pay for a single class. Very few people buy a 10 pack. It's either like they're all in or they're just kind of like once a week kind of thing.
Okay.
Excuse me. So that's how I do it. And I've done it.
Right out of the gate, if you have a lot of people buy the singles, I would jack that price up. That would be like, especially in that area, that would be $30 for a drop in.
And that was solely at the beginning. I didn't know where to start, and it was like, sure, $20 a class. That's where we'll start, and it's kind of stuck from there.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said for just looking at the general ecosystem for what people charge for a drop in, and be something in that range, right? Like you can absolutely price yourself out of the ecosystem. I am curious on the 10 and the 20. Do you track attendance at all?
Yes.
Okay. So on average, how many times a month are people coming in?
Yeah. It's about 10 to 12 times. Especially the regulars, the ones that buy 20. So if they're coming in, 3 times a week, times 4 weeks a month, it's about a dozen times.
Okay. So this is
what I do
example. Go ahead.
Sorry. What I do allow, and maybe I shouldn't, is couples can just use the same class, right? So if I have, Jack and Jill, they can buy one class. I'll just keep checking away their 20s, regardless of who comes in. And then when 20 runs out, I let them know and they re-up.
Okay. So I've said this a million times, like there is no one size fits all. If you guys listen to the podcast, and I'm sure you have, or maybe you haven't, Richard, but like you'll
No, I do.
generally hear, okay. So generally you'll hear us say like, hey, we try to avoid the limited memberships.
Yeah.
However, there are circumstances where those make the most sense. And looking at this, I'm imagining some limited membership packages in order to get people into recurring revenue so that you can have a little bit more capital flowing through and I can have some sort of consistent idea of like what I'm going to be bringing in month over month. And if just based on these 10 class punches, and you told me they're coming in roughly about that amount of time, you could sell a 3 time a week or a 12 session membership at $190 to $200 all day based on what you currently have. And if you want to kind of let's split the difference here, strategy that we would tell is like, if you have those people that they kind of have a good deal now, you let them keep it for right now. If you want to let the mom and dad split the membership, it's fine for now. But I would always tell like, just stop selling those moving forward, right? So if you've got it, congratulations, you win the lottery. But if you're new, here's what that looks like moving forward. So in this scenario, for a couple of different reasons, you have limited space, limited class time. It actually is completely illogical for you to have some sort of unlimited option with your current setup, because nobody would be able to take advantage of it and you would be overcharging for it. However, based on the attendance that you have there, if they're coming in 10 to 12 times, 10 is 180. They're actually going to get a bargain based on that math on your current pricing. If you were to go do 12 for 200 and that recycles every month or 4 weeks, whatever you want to do it on. So that way you could introduce your first recurring membership, and then maybe you do a twice a week option for, call it based on that math, like $150, right? So $150 for twice a week, 200 for 3 times a week. But now I've got some recurring membership offers, and that'll help you start to do a couple different things, help you to get a little bit more consistent revenue across month over month, at which now point I can figure out like, what is my, in air quotes, operating costs, or how can I start, stacking some capital on the side to either get more equipment so that I can put more people into the classes. But you have a lot of options now. So based on your scenario, I would be inclined to roll those out in addition to referrals and all that other kind of stuff, which we would look at. So, but the first thing is like getting some sort of consistent revenue, which means we have to at least move slightly in the direction of recurring membership options.
Okay.
And like I said, I would probably solely stick with that. I would have no unlimited options until you can open up the class schedule, at which point now it makes more sense.
Yeah.
So, okay. Talk to me about the partnership deal. So yoga is one of the ideas.
Yeah, it still needs to be fleshed out. Basically, just under the precipice of, for one person right now, it's retail space is way too expensive to take on by yourself. And so we were trying to figure out how to, basically split that rent, for lack of a better term. It's still very early conversations, so I don't have anything really fleshed out, but these are the things that we're just talking back and forth if we wanted to go into a brick and mortar and seriously consider that.
Generally speaking, the partnerships are a bad idea in the CrossFit space. Not because they're a bad idea, but because like the math just typically doesn't work, right? You see very, very few partnerships. Anytime somebody comes in and affiliate you and they have partners, is one of the first conversations that we have. You're like, yo, this is probably going to become a sticking point at some unknown point down the road. And we typically always encourage them, like we recommend somebody buy somebody else out. It's just really hard.
Every day we're trying to get rid of Ackerman. Every day.
Correct. Yeah. It's too much. And I think everybody, so typically when we're talking about partnerships, they're like, hey, it's a money issue. Or like, hey, we could have more money. I'm like, well, then just do private financing, right? Like if that person has money and wants to give it to you, just figure out what that loan looks like. Be like, it's 7%. Okay, cool. You get 7%. I'd rather give it to you than give it to the bank. Okay, done. What does that look like? Mark up a deal and go from there. And the reason for that is again, we're speaking in generalities here, but there's typically like there's an operator and then there's a financier, right? Like and many conversations don't have are not had in most of these, but it's just like the operator is behaving under the guise that the financier is going to contribute operationally, which is typically not going to happen, at which point things fall apart. So if that's not going to be the case and we're not both going to kind of operate and actually manage the business together, then I'm like, then just take a private, just take private money rather than go to the bank in that scenario. Because they would be happy to get 7% or 10% if if they really wanted to be aggressive on their money over time. Because operationally, what we typically find is in the partnerships, everything is a wrestling match, and I don't mean like necessarily in a bad way. It just means that like any decision that's going to be made is if the operating agreement isn't written well, which 0% of them are, then it has to go through too many hurdles for somebody to make a decision on something, right? Like for instance, like, hey, we're going to revamp our prices. I'm like, well, we have to go back and forth on this. You don't agree. I want to do punch cards. You don't want to do punch cards. I think agreements are gross. You're like, we should definitely do agreements. And now we can get zero traction on something that should be a fairly easy decision to make and then move forward on. And we just see that over and over and over. Anybody who works with as a partnership moves at a significantly slower pace than those who are not, who just have a single operator who gets to do all the stuff.
Is there any universe in which like two separate entities could share a space? I'm just spitballing here.
Yeah, so absolutely, I think so. And this all comes down to writing the agreement the right way. Okay, so this all comes out to be like, hey, we sit down and we have a lengthy discussion about all the stuff. And yes, you should get a lawyer. This is for everybody. I'm not just talking to you, Rich, but like get a lawyer, pay said lawyer to write out a very specific and very detailed operating agreement that CrossFit P.U.G and Bendy Yoga want to go in and they want to both operate out of the same space. I would literally walk up to a legal professional, an attorney, a lawyer, and be like, yo, this is what we're thinking about. We need an operating agreement based on that. Two separate entities operating out of the same space, write up all the contingencies. They leave early. They default on rent. I want to buy them out. We have disagreements on time slots, and have them just start writing something out, and they're going to send it to you, and then you guys both redline it. You guys sit at the table, you argue about stuff, and then you come to a compromise, and then you have the lawyer rewrite it again. And you're all the time people are like, oh, I'm going to pay a lawyer $400-$500 an hour for this. I'm like, yes, because if you don't, you're absolutely going to end up fighting with this person. You will both get screwed, and you will eat all of the liability. That universe exists, and I would argue that it probably only exists in a world where they spend probably an unreasonable amount of time ironing out the details of how that would work. Like who's responsible for what, who pays rent. Do we operate completely separately from a collection standpoint? Like all those things need to be ironed out. And all of the contingencies are like, hey, worst case scenario, you wake up tomorrow and you just hate my guts for some reason. How do we resolve that?
Yep.
Because if everybody knows what the rules are before going into the scenario and they know what all the contingencies are, right? Very similar to like writing membership agreements. People don't have a problem with agreements if the rules are clearly stated prior to. This is like one of the this is like one of the unspoken things in the CrossFit space. Like people don't like contracts. I'm like, no, they don't like shitty contracts. So don't write those. And if partnerships are going to work, like Jay and Marcus and I just did this. We started this like 4 months ago, and we sat down in a room. We locked ourselves in a room, and we were like, "Yo, how does this work? Like, you die. What do we do? You decide you don't want to work anymore, Jason Ackerman. What do we do? Right? Yeah. And this idea is super important from a business standpoint. That those conversations need to be had. So, in your scenario, I definitely think that option should be on the table, but there's many hours of uncomfortable conversations that need to be had before you guys get to the point where you're like, we agree on this operating agreement. We all know the rules. We all know that like in worst case scenario, Here's what happens. Because you introduce money into the game, everything changes. Everybody's cool into like who's liable for the default,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yep.
that scenario, be like, you default, who, like whatever, we can't pay rent, who is liable? When we sign this lease, how does that work, right? What happens if one business grows faster than the other? Right, the CrossFit takes off, and you're like, I want to buy you out. I want to kick you out of the space. How does that work? So I would iron out all those things, because it very well might be the best option to get yourself off of the ground, but you have to think past that. Okay, once we are off the ground and we are operating and things are going well for either one or both of us, like how do we part ways amicably, understanding what the rules are? So I think in the partnerships they can work. In that scenario, they can work. I typically don't see them work because of the money is typically not there. Not to say that you can't pay multiple people out of a gym like we do.
Sure.
But I would tell you, we don't make enough out of the gym so I can pay myself, all of my staff, and then pay my wife like a full-time living wage. And that would be the same as a partnership. Right? Is she a partner on the business? Yeah, but that's not how our business is structured. So same thing, you know. So that would be my guidance there, is like, I would have some real hard conversations, and don't be in a hurry. Just continue to grow your business, and you know, fractionally improve the revenue, so that like whenever you guys do come to an agreement with her, or chiropractor or physical therapist or massage, like whatever it might be, you're like, okay, cool, I have the cash on hand. This operating agreement is solid. We found a space that actually works perfectly. The terms of the lease are acceptable. And I actually don't really need to invest a ton of money in any sort of build out. Like, I have the equipment. They have their equipment. We got to get in there, slap some paint on the walls, clean the toilets, and get to business. It's like, okay, cool.
Yeah. And I think that all sounds great. And I think there's still a little bit of a time from where I am now until then. And so what I'm trying to figure out too is like, what fills in that space? Like, how do I continue to grow? And then when do I know that I've reached the point where it's okay to have those serious conversations? Because I'm continuing to grow now.
Right.
You know, we're getting a couple people every month who are coming in,
Okay.
which is, for me, by a percent base, you know, 2 or 3 people a month is a lot, right?
You're talking about like, you're almost like month over month, you're having like large jumps in percentage wise growth.
Yeah, I mean, I had 3 people sign up who have stuck around in December, and I've had 2 in January and 1 already in February. So it's going pretty well, and I want to continue that. And I think we've touched on this a little bit before. Maybe it's adding more classes and so on and so forth. At what point do I think about, hey, maybe I need to have someone else coach another class, or is it all me at this point, or those sorts of things?
Yeah, some of that stuff, it gets into like, I don't know what the rest of your work, family life looks like, but you will have to balance that. I'm usually pretty candid with people. Like, if it's something that you want to make the transition in, there will be a period of time that looks real gnarly with regard to like, yo, I'm going to do this, and I'm really going to need to lay the throttle down here in order to get over this hump, to get where I need to go. I don't know what that time looks like, but however long it is, I'm like, it does look a little gnarly when you look at it on paper with regard to like the amount of time and effort put into it to make it happen. And as long as you understand that, like I always tell myself, I don't ask myself how much it's going to cost, and I don't ask myself how long it's going to take. It's going to cost what it's going to cost, and it's going to take how long it's going to take. Because if I start trying to quantify it, it becomes overwhelming and I'll get disappointed. But if I'm like, yo, I'm in this, and this is how it's going to work. And if it takes 5 years, it takes 5 years. I don't care. And that allows me to operate a little bit more clearly with regard to what I want, and also not allow me to get a little bit too over my skis because I made up some arbitrary timeline. The biggest business mistakes I've ever made were because I pressed myself on time.
Yeah.
I created an arbitrary time frame that didn't have anything to do with anything, and fooled myself into urgency that was not actually there. So I don't do that anymore. I'm like, they're going to take, it's like, it take 10 years. And I'm like, we need to do that this month. I'm like, I don't need to do anything this month.
And is there a revenue stream that I'm missing aside from memberships and sort of making those income, those purchases more regular?
Yeah. So that's the first step. The second step would be, there's multiple avenues to do this. So like the first step is just like create recurring. The second step you might loop in there is move from a 1 month to 4 week billing. The third step would be some sort of onboarding cost. Like how are you going to meet with people when you bring them into the gym? And that could be one session. But, you know, if you charge somebody, I don't know, 80 to 90 bucks for that single session, and then they're there for a year, you know, you're talking about, was that a 10%? No, not 10%. If you're doing 180, 90, right. Yeah, I mean, if let's just say your average client value was 180 bucks, it just went up to 187.50, right? So I'm looking at like, it doesn't sound like a huge jump, but if I'm adding almost $10 average client value to everybody that walks in the door because they come through an onboarding process, like that matters over time, you know, because if you extrapolate that out and it's just, it goes from, you know, 10 people to 50 people, 50 times almost 10 bucks, you're talking about additional 500 bucks, $6,000 a year in additional operating capital. So outside of that, you know, I'd venture to guess you don't really have the bandwidth to do a ton of nutrition coaching, or that's even before we even talk about like, do you even want to do that?
No, what I've done so far is actually refer those to a friend who does do that, just so that it's there. To be honest, most of my folks haven't. They're into the nutrition, but they haven't like really looked at that in conjunction with the fitness side yet. I had a bunch of folks do sort of the New Year's Whole30 thing on their own. But I haven't looked or focused on bringing that in-house as part of the.
I wouldn't really recommend that you do currently. Like you have too many things on your plate as it is.
Yeah,
and
right now, especially with my, I don't mean this pejoratively, with my immature sort of membership, again, most who are less than a year into their CrossFit journey, I'm focusing on just trying to instill the habit of, let's come to class every 3 days. Let's look forward to working out. Let's, you know, that sort of thing.
Show up here and train before we start messing around with your macros.
Yeah, and it's again, so hilarious. Actually, she's going to laugh if she ever sees this, but I had one lady who just discovered pre-workout for the first time. And like, I'm like, Mary, we don't need pre-workout at 5 a.m. I just need you to come and work out. And
Mary's walking at 5 a.m. bringing the heat.
She is. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not that nutrition programs don't have tremendous value. It's all about like where I'm putting my time and effort. Right. So I'm actually reading a book called On Managing Yourself. It's like, I think it's one of the Harvard Business School's, I forget what's that series of book it's called. It might just be called the Harvard Business School Book Review or something like that. But one of the things he talks about, and I kind of disagree and agree with the sentiment, but essentially he's talking about, don't work on the things that you're bad at, like go all in on the thing that you're good at. And I think that just maybe requires a little bit more context, meaning it's just like some people don't really know what they're good at yet. So, or you're just not good at anything yet because you haven't done it long enough. So that doesn't necessarily work per se, or you have to find out first. But in this instance, from a business standpoint, I'm like, iron out your core thing first before you start adding on additional layers to that, because all it will be is a diversion of time and energy for minimal return in most instances, or even worse, short term that sets me up for long-term failure. Because you can get to that later, and there's a million ways to do that. So I typically recommend just do your core thing. Like it's better to add 5 clients into your core thing than try to spin up a new offering that has 5 clients, because now it's like double the work. When it's actually not much more work for me to add more clients into my group offering. So, so that, I mean, maybe a little bit of retail, but you're not gonna to do a ton there. Like the first thing I would look at is just like, and this sounds going to sound a little wild, but like, what would it look like to double your current clientele? Let's call it, we go to 40 people. You got 20 now. What would it look like to double? How would I do that in my never leaving my garage? In my current circumstances, looking at attendance, how would I go up 100% in my core membership? And you can do that a lot of ways. 1 or 2 or 3 more class offerings, play around with the programming a little bit, add 1 or 2 pieces of equipment, and all of a sudden I can facilitate 40 people on the books at any given point.
Richard, what programming do you use right now?
Street parking, actually,
Right.
because of the garage gym aspect,
Well,
basically.
that's
And
they literally write it for that. So like that makes sense. And
yeah,
Miranda and the crew there, like she's been around forever, dude. Like she's smart.
yeah.
She understands programming. She wore the red shirt for a long time. She was a flow master. Like she knows her shit. So that's perfect.
I
That makes
found
perfect
that
sense.
that was the most accessible. I mean, I searched around. I tried just when I first started, it was like, let's just throw stuff against the wall and see what sticks, kind of introducing people to the movements. And then when I needed a little bit more
Right.
structure, about 6 months ago, I looked at them real hard, and they just have options for everything. As far as like, I can use the dumbbells if I have a big class, because I have a ton of dumbbells at this point. I've got 4 or 5 barbells, so we can do that if we've got people that want to do that. And they also do the fun sandbag stuff too every once in a while. So yeah, so that's worked out really well.
I'm trying to do some rough math here, but let's just say you
Mhm.
could get your average client value, right? So let's just say we can move everybody north of $180, right? And you're currently at 180 times 20, $3,600 a month. Easy math says if I could double that, I'm looking at $7,000 a month. At $7,000 a month recurring revenue, I'm definitely in a position now where paying rent at 1,000 square feet at $40 is now a feasible discussion.
Yeah.
Right. And I would argue doubling your membership might sound a little crazy, but when you have small membership, it's actually not that crazy at all. So a lot of this has to do with like, and I learned this concept the hard way every year, right? Every year I'm like, oh shit, okay, I got to look at this a little bit differently. I'm always asking myself, I'm like, what are the numbers? And I'm not a numbers guy, for the record. Like, I am a guy who hates falling on his face. So the way I have learned to try to start avoid that is like, oh, I need to like, no kidding, know the numbers, because math doesn't lie, right? If I know what the rent in that facility costs, I know what I'm collecting. I can find out what the utilities on that by pulling, historic data from public records. Like all that shit is available. At which point I can go in there and be like, this math works. Here's what I'm paying taxes. Here's the CAM. Here's how the lease is written. I got to put first month and last month. That's already factored in there. And I'm like, cool, this works. And I'm only running one class a day.
Yeah.
What are the odds that I'm not going to get more clients by adding an additional class a day? Like pretty fucking low, right? So if you start looking at all that, the questions become pretty specific. Like, how do we get to 40, right? And that's an equation in of itself. Can I find 1,000 square feet at $40 a square foot? Right. Okay. Because I know, roughly speaking, that math will work out and I can pay rent and have a little buffer for utilities and all this other stuff. Because the cost does creep and everybody's just like, well, I got to pay rent and utilities and that's it. And I'm like, oh, no. There's all sorts of stuff that creeps in there. Merchant fees. You got to set aside money for taxes. Like you have all your whole software stack for all the stuff that you're going to use to run your facility. You got to buy supplies every single month. Right. Like it just starts to stack really quickly. Bank transaction fees that I'm not even sure why the bank charges me those, but they do, So
Yeah.
it starts to get real specific with regard to like, what's it actually going to cost me to operate this business? Okay. So let's say 1,000 square feet, $4,500 a month. Okay, cool. Well, if I'm doing 7,000, I'm pretty certain that I can make that work.
Yeah.
Assuming I'm not going to have $3,000, $3,500 creep in there in additional costs, which would be high, but let's just call it another $1,500 in there for random expenses every single month. Okay. Now I'm $1,500 left over after that, paying myself some corporate rent just to get the thing started. And then I'm adding classes and stacking members on there. So for you, that would be my quarterly goal, right? So let's call it 2/3 of the way through Q1.
Yep.
My goal for you would be like, how do we get to 40 by the end of Q2? Do a little bit of a price restructure. What's the math on how I would get 40 people in there where nobody would feel left out? And then at that point, keeping track of that average client value, trying to move people over to recurring model. Because 40 people, I don't think would be that wild.
No,
facility.
especially if it gets more guys to come, because there's definitely space on the guy guy days. I hate referring to it like that, but that's how it's worked
Yeah.
out.
We call them
But
better
yeah.
days here when the guys show up. They're just
Right.
better. I'm just kidding.
Right. So
My
it's a
wife
softball
is
for. So
hearing.
here's a
She heard
softball for
that
you guys.
somewhere.
Softball for you guys, and I started looking at the Bring a Friend Week kind of slides you guys have going on, which has been helpful. But like, aside from just word of mouth growth, what else can I be doing to bring people in?
Great question. So how do you, when you think about word of mouth, what does that mean to you? It's not a trick question.
Honestly, it's just been it's been my members talking to their friends now, bringing people in. I've had one or two people just reach out based off of, there's now a CrossFit in the neighborhood kind of thing, trying to find out who I am. But for the most part, it's
just
kind of
follow
funny.
the loud sounds of barbells and music.
Yeah, well, you get I'm going through all those moments now where all the members are talking about it at their social functions kind of thing. And, I feel like a proud Papa Bear kind of thing. But that's how everyone is kind of coming in right now.
That's
because I've stopped recruiting at the pickup lines, and now it's just friends.
Still keep recruiting at the pickup line because that just really is cool for me and Cody to hear about. But the other thing is, so that's great. So number one, what I want to highlight here is that like what you're doing is you're doing your core thing really well. If people are talking about it, this is me knowing nothing about your coaching, right? Doesn't matter at this point. If you're doing your thing really well, people talk about it. The end, right? Because if they weren't talking about it, we could assume you're not doing it very well because they don't care. So that's the first piece. Now what I need to do is I need to put some sort of mechanism in place that would incentivize them to essentially encourage an additional transaction, right? So this is where the referral comes in. So two things with regard to the referral. The referral, it should and we recommend be live all the time. If Cody brings you into my gym, whether it's Bring a Friend Week or not, like he gets a referral, you get a referral, boom, we're done. So if they like it, they're telling people about it. Really all I need to do now is to design a financial incentive that works for me and is large enough for them to encourage somebody else to start. So this is why we recommend 40%. 40% is a large enough one-time transaction to get people's attention, and it allows me to net positive on the combined transaction of both people. Meaning, like if I was at 40% collectively between those two people, I'm going to bring in 120% of that revenue this month. The following month, I'm up 100% on that because I have one more additional person. Okay. And we recommend that goes to both people. So the first thing is like create a referral offer. So at 180, I'll just tell you what the math is right now. It's $75. Right. So $75, $75 to you, $75 to Cody. Give that however you want. It doesn't matter. So that's the first thing, is design the offer, what it is. Fairly simple. Then give people a reason to use the offer. And I always joke about this. This is the mayonnaise effect, right? If you just run around yelling referrals, it's real weird. Okay. They're like, I get it. Used car salesman guy. It's like if somebody was walking around eating mayonnaise out of a jar, you'd be like, sociopath. Right. That's weird, bro. Okay. However, if I walked by somebody who's eating a sandwich that had mayonnaise on it, I largely wouldn't notice. Like it wouldn't be weird or out of place. I'd be like, dude's eating a sandwich, maybe it has mayonnaise on it or not. I don't really dig mayonnaise, whatever, but it's not weird anymore. It's logically placed and it makes sense. This is where the Bring a Friend Week comes in, right? Because if I say, hey guys, bring your friends this week, you will get $75 off if they join. Now I can hammer that referral offer because it's logically paired with a reason for them to bring somebody in and why they would get a benefit for doing so. So you run 2 or 3 of those a year, you could probably get an additional 10 people off of that over the course of 1 year, at which point now I'm at 30. Now I need to randomly find 10 more people in the carpool line and I'm at 40. And now I can have a real discussion about, okay, like what are my options with regard to space?
Yep.
So I would start with the referral, and then I saw you pull that up earlier. Cody, can you pull up the website real quick?
Yeah.
Which is woefully out of date at this point too. I need to put some more pictures of ladies.
Listen, based on what I saw earlier, it's better than many gyms that I see.
And like you're a garage affiliate with 20 people. Like I'm surprised at the website, right? Like
I was like, oh, he's a website. This guy's crushing.
All right, where do you want me to go here?
All right, cool. Okay, so the first thing here, listen, for the record, I'm not a website person, everybody, but I've looked at hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of websites, and I can tell you what typically works and doesn't work. So right out of the gate here,
yep.
Richard, there's no call to action, right? So I would want to put, and I'm assuming you have pugs, by the way. Otherwise, this would be.
Yeah, he's there. Yeah, he's sleeping right down there. Yep.
Okay, fair enough.
He's our mascot.
I would want like a big button here. So like not that let's chat button, but like a big button here that says, click on join us. What does that do, Cody? Okay, cool. Okay, so this has some information on it. Let's just say this did go to a form. Scroll back up, Cody. I would want, typically when you design web pages, you want to avoid anybody having to scroll down or up in order to give you information. It doesn't mean they're not going to scroll down or up. They're going to scroll down to get more information. But within every frame of the website, there should be a button for a call to action. Cody, pull up CrossFit Rife real quick on the side, and then we'll go to that. So, but if I go to contact, what does that do on that one? I'm really challenging Cody's skills here. Okay, cool. So everything you have on here, Richard, is essentially what's called like they would have to actively reach out to you instead of just provide information so that I could follow up with them. Okay, so we would want to change that. That would be the first thing, is just have a button. Again, forms should be really, really simple. We're not going to talk about ad copy and any of that other stuff or keywords or any of that nonsense. It doesn't matter right now. Okay, just hit free consult right here. Yep. Cool. This just pops up a page, right? So they can fill this out, right? That form right there, name, email, phone number, and then they're done. Okay.
Got it.
Now go back to the home page, Cody. So notice the other thing on here is, and again, all websites need work, right? But so keep scrolling down. At any point I kind of change frames, you see how there's a call to action in every single frame.
Yep.
I always want them to be able to hit that button at any point that they're navigating the website. I want to riddle it with those call to actions, and all those go to the same spot. So those would be a handful of changes I would make to the website. It's just like allow them to give you their information rather than have them reach out to you.
Got it.
And you'll get significantly higher engagement. If you go to memberships, Cody, like we always have this question on there, that just pops up. It's a pop-up. It's the same thing, right? And then I'll reach out to them about what questions they have. So I would be willing to guarantee if you put those on your website that you would get 10 leads this
Got it.
year.
Okay.
Right? Like that would be a no-brainer. So those would be a couple things that I would do. And shout out real quick. Go to Rife Gear. Go back. Yeah, if you guys haven't checked out Fully Amped, they're the ones selling the open shirts. But this is kind of what your store would look like. So shout out to Dina and crew. Did that pop up or no? Or is it just slow? Yeah, right here. So you can go in there and you create your own like Shopify store, stuff like that. So shout out there. Cool. So you can pull that down, Cody. So those would be a couple things I would do, right? I would do the math on the logistics of class, space, and programming on how to double. I'd put the referral in place, and then I would make those minor adjustments to the website. And those are, I would argue, like stacking those three things on top of each other. I would be willing to wage Cody's next paycheck that you'll be at 40 by July.
A lot of pressure on me there, Cody. Sorry.
Yeah. But those would be some easy fixes that are not going to cost you any money really, but are all enhancing, your ability to have conversations and your ability to provide service to more people, right? So it's just like logistically, how would I make it fit in the space? Give people the opportunity to create incentive for other people to bring them in, so I can maximize, because those people have really high conversion and really high retention. Your referrals. We had a lady just walking here yesterday. She was like, "Yeah, Megan sent me." And she's like, "I'm joining today." And I was like, "Well, okay, I'll take your money, right?
Yep.
We'll skip all of the pleasantries. I'll take your money,
right?"
And then just do a little bit of optimization on that website. And again, that's just the functionality of the website. I'm not talking like keywords. I'm not talking like your Google business page or your SEO or anything like that. I'm just talking about just making it easy for people to give you name, email, phone number. Start there, and then you can dive down the SEO rabbit hole later on in your business ownership life. But those would be three big ones, I would think, that would be super low hanging fruit that would have what I would think a pretty significant impact on like trying to grow the business so that you can get out of your garage. I mean,
yeah. Awesome.
What else, man? Open forum. Hit us with anything you got.
That's the big one right now. At the beginning, I struggled with how to sort of invest in equipment as we grew, but that sort of solved itself, and I think we've got what we need. Yeah, that's basically it, though. I really appreciate it. My big question was kind of like the class pack to the membership and how to transition that and get that recurring revenue stream in.
I would. There would be a soft transition there is where I would go. So, right. So I would build the new kind of what we call service suite. Like, what's my new offering going to be?
Yeah.
And then I would sell that to all new clients. And then I would come up with some timeline where I was going to be trying to pull my old clients off of the old punch cards and be like, yo, starting in July, these are going to go away. Here are the options. At which point you roll out any number of things. Be like, hey, here's paid in full if you want to save money, all that kind of stuff to make it enticing for them. But having that shift off of that kind of like pay whenever you get to it or whenever you're going to use them versus just like recurring and you work through. But if you're at 20 now, man, I think 40 is the target. 40 is the target, and then make the adjustments on the membership, and you for sure have enough revenue based on the price points there to have a conversation about going into a small space.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's interesting though, as a especially garage gym or an affiliate that works out outside a lot too. You're seasonal almost with the weather, but once you get them hooked, you'd be amazed who shows up when it's like 20 degrees outside. It's really cool.
Yeah, people are crazy. I always joke, I'm like, CrossFitters are they're nuts. And while they do complain, they complain about the weird stuff. Like my members are like, it's too cold in here. I'm like, the AC's running. Like, oh my God. They're like, can you turn that heater off? I'm like, it's 14 degrees outside. It's currently 67 in the facility. Like, what are you talking about? Last thing I want to, Cody, can you pull up the those two articles real quick? So I don't know if you've read some of this old, I'm assuming you have, Richard, because you're
the old
like
journal.
These two old articles are worth reading because he talks about meaning Coach Glassman talks about a lot of the stuff that we have referenced here about like the equipment, the space, the layout, and like how to do that. So this one is written by Greg Glassman, which is what's the title of that one, Cody? It's like the garage gym. And then the other article, and this is actually, I like forgot about this. The other article, which is Beyond the Gym, written by Pat Sherwood. This is super funny. So scroll down. So I started in Pat's gym, right? So those two pictures right there, those two people on the left, that's Chris and Penny. I actually started the gym with them. Meaning like I started CrossFit Rife with them, and I started in that's Sherwood's garage. And those two people were Pat Sherwood's first clients ever. And then that is CrossFit Virginia Beach. That was the first gym I was ever at. This is like super old school in their facility. And I was like, pulled those up. I was like, oh, and I can't remember that dude, the guy, Kurt. That is his name, Kurt. He is he probably retired at this point, Navy pilot. Scroll down. I think that was the only photos in there, but I had a little trip down memory lane when we were doing that. Because I was like, dude, that was like 2008. It was like 15 years ago. But he breaks down a ton of stuff in here as well. And I think people just forget there's a ton of resources in there just to go back and just like a bunch of stuff in there. I did want to bring up that, I saw you started that question in there, Cody. You want to pop that up real quick?
Yeah, I'll throw it up.
So what about a personal trainer who he can rent current space to as an option for this in between time to increase revenue some without taking up more of your time? If you were in a brick and mortar, I would be okay with that. I probably wouldn't be renting out my garage to personal trainers. That would be a little sketch. We're going to be doing extensive backgrounds and, other stuff if you're going to be doing that. So like you could do that, Morgan. And I have done that in some other facilities in the past. Here's the downfall with that is just like they run their own business and you rent it out and you run the risk of some garbage trainer training people inside of your facility that could be very, very cringe because I've seen it. I'm like, oh my God, people probably think that you work for me. And I am in no way, shape, or form condoning what is happening over there on the training floor. So it's just one of those things where like, if you need the revenue, like obviously be pragmatic about it. Like, yo, I'll take the $300 in rent from you every single month in order to make this thing happen until I don't need it anymore. But it doesn't come without some kind of like hidden, cost, if you will, with regard to like, you don't have any say on like how this person executes their business.
Yeah.
So, cool. What else, man? Anything else?
That's what
anything
I
else
got.
burning in your brain that we can help you with?
No, that's what I've got. You guys have been helpful.
Richard, I got a couple of things.
Yeah, go for it.
Do you have, when you say word of mouth, do you have your clients like, tag your, pulled up your Instagram? Do you have them take photos and tag you in, their workouts and stuff when you're at the park, or
Yeah,
after
a lot of time,
sport, right?
yeah, so they do that, and then a lot of times I or my wife will take pictures of them, tag them, and they'll repost that.
Cool.
So everyone gets a kick out of that.
Yep, that helps get your the word out.
Yep.
Super easy.
In fact, most of our stuff these days is done on the Instagram account as opposed to the website. That's where I get most of the engagement from the crew, and even communicate with them as to whether or not we're, if it's raining out, I'll put on the story, hey, no class today, or whatever the case may be, or we are having class, that kind of thing.
And to
follow
up,
yeah, go ahead.
To follow up on our point earlier about the Bring a Friend Week, I'm just looking right here. You have 345 people who are following you on Instagram. You're telling me you offer a Bring a Friend Week, you can't get 10, 15, 50 to show up for that? Like,
I know where Cody's going with this, and you can see who runs our Instagram, our social media, Richard. Cody's like, you need to slide in them DMs, bro, and just like start have a copy paste and just drop it into 350 profiles.
Yep. I mean, the leads are there. They're cold, right? But they're there.
Yeah.
They're following you already. They see your stuff, and it's it's not a hard ask to be like, hey, show up for a class, meet us at the park on a Saturday, right?
Yep. Cool.
The other thing, this is a little bit more of a long-term strategy, Richard, but I would imagine being in the intro world, you're not a stranger to writing in any way, shape, or form.
No.
Meaning like, yeah. So the other thing you could do is like, blogging is still a thing. Meaning, said otherwise, providing free education to people.
Mm-hmm.
And you could have a whole series of, garage workouts, all pointing back to your facility, that are housed on your blog, that you could drop into those DMs when you're communicating with people. And you could kind of like write out 15 titles and then slowly work your way through some of those blogs. Now you're getting into it, like you want to optimize them for keyword searches and stuff like that. So you would want to make sure that you reference your gym and those blogs, all that kind of stuff. But it's just blogging used to be the thing back in the day, and now nobody does it anymore. And I think it's kind of an open space for people to occupy because nobody does it anymore. And it's just low hanging fruit. Like, it's not going to cost you a ton of time. Write one a month, try to get to 750 words, drop it in there, and I can reference it, and you can make Instagram posts on it. You can drop it into DMs for people. You can house it on your website. Now it has SEO implications. Super easy, and it's unique to you.
Yeah, one of the things I was doing, and I got to get back into too, is we were doing like the highlighted athlete a month or something like that, and post it on the Instagram page and talk about the improvement that so and so has made. Because I've even got like those success stories of where someone couldn't squat below parallel, right, and now they're doing overhead squats, kind of thing. So it's great.
That's cool. Do you have something else, Cody? Yeah.
For you and for Richard both. Like, I'm in Alabama. You guys are in different areas, but here we have Facebook groups of, let's just say, 90% women, right? They all like to chat, right? They all like to run in the kind of the same circles. But like, for example, mine here in my city is called What's Happening in Madison, right? And it's basically just all these people who live in my city who are, hey, we've got a new restaurant that's opening. We've got this. So-and-so is doing this over here. But they also it's a really good spot for people to ask for recommendations for things, because it's really hard for them to get, I would say, pointed information just generally. So they go into these groups. They say, hey, I'm looking for a personal trainer or a gym to join. What are your recommendations? That's a really good spot for you to just be like, hey, here's what I've got. Or your members to be where they can actually recommend you as well. So I would say, like, if that's not an area you've explored before, or if you have that, in your smaller, suburban area.
Yeah, we actually have a community listserv that I've explored putting out there on there. That's actually quite active, believe it or not. So
yeah, and so like that's another spot where you can provide, like what Fern was saying too, free education.
Yep. Great.
Richard, have you done the open yet?
I'm going to do it in about an hour. So we'll
Did
see.
you? Well, I have to assume that you did it at 14.4 because you've been around for a while.
No, actually, I didn't. I had a gap in a couple years. So in 2013, I had knee surgery, and so there was a couple of years.
No
Yeah,
excuse. Play like a champion.
I know. There were a couple of years there where I didn't do the open. So, but we'll see. I judged a couple this morning.
Cody and I were chatting. I was like, I couldn't remember. I was like, I think I made it to the muscle ups. Cody, you said you didn't make it to the muscle ups?
No.
Yeah, Cody didn't make it. I made it to, this is 14.4. If I make it to the muscle ups, if I get like 1, I'm going to consider myself world champion this year.
I think that's my goal. That's my goal.
Yeah. But I did 11. I think it was 11.
11, yeah, as you said earlier.
11 and 14.4. Or sorry, yeah, in 2014. So we'll see. I imagine myself blowing up somewhere in between the toes to bar and the wall balls.
Just sounds about right. Yeah, we had to go in wave fashion this morning with the rower. So like I said, I got 1 rower, so it was every 4 or 5 minutes. Go.
Don't slow down. I'm coming after you. Cool, man. Well, listen, I hope this was helpful. That's literally the whole point.
Yeah, it was super helpful. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and again, if you guys have questions, I'm not going to answer them if you don't subscribe to the YouTube channel. No, we will answer them if you subscribe, even if you don't subscribe, but we will give you shit for it. But please subscribe to the YouTube channel if you like this content. If you're interested in coming on the show, Cody dropped that link on there, www.besthouroftheirday.com/interview -intake -form, and we will get you in the pipeline because I think we're booked up for at least a month already. Correct, Cody?
We got 5.
So 5 weeks out. So if you want to come on the show, let us know. But yeah, want to help you guys. And if you guys have questions, hit us up. And if you guys want from now on, drop those questions in the chat. But Richard, thank you, sir. I look forward to seeing you guys. Yeah, I look forward to seeing you get out of the garage.
Yeah, me too. Thank you.
Good luck in the open, everybody. Good luck. See you there.